Okay, welcome back. This is Wayne Madsen with the Sunday Report, the Sunday Roundup, and we're joined tonight by our special guest, John Edward Hurley, longtime observer of Washington politics, who worked with longtime White House correspondent Sarah McClendon. And John, you were talking about we were talking about FBI informants and photographers and whatnot, but finish up what you were talking about.
Yeah, I was mentioning that they were talking in yesterday's CNN broadcast about a photographer who was actually taking pictures for the FBI, but he was friendly with all the civil rights people, Martin Luther King and Andrew Young and so on. Then I was describing how someone stopped by my place, Confederate Memorial Hall, wanted to take pictures and so on. I said, we didn't have a budget for it. And I said, well, as long as you're not obtrusive, because a lot of, our guests are, some people feel a little, uncomfortable, so please don't intrude upon them, She said, okay. So, and she was attending all of my events. Later on, I found out Secret Service.
Right.
So they're covering me, see. It's a Secret Service. Then I found out somebody else was a member, a sustaining member. Oh, he's FBI counterintelligence. Then I had a meeting at the press club one time, and with the Committee for Responsibility and Ethics in Washington, the crew, you see a lot of those people around. And so it was my guest, the person, and all of a sudden these off-the-wall provocative questions start coming from this one individual. So, they were insulting,
Right.
So then the guest, one of the heads of the crew, called me later and said, you really sent me into a hornet's nest. That was very unappreciated, And I said, well, I didn't know that, fella, and, but, it made it very awkward for me, at the press club. I apologize. I hadn't known. Anyway, I waited a while. Later on, FBI informant.
Right. They're all over the place.
They're all over the place. I remember when I was young, speaking of my long the posture of naivete. When I was young and they were talking about the Soviet Union, the Soviet threat, they said, remember, when you're in the Soviet Union, or if you're in Moscow or someplace, you never know. The clerk in the hotel might be an agent,
Right.
The room might be bugged because this is the Soviet Union, and they were telling these stories about how this was what happened in communism and all that. Well, gee, Christ, it seems like to me that we have plain meetings that are open to the public. We don't have any agenda that is any way could be construed as unpatriotic, and yet we have agents, FBI, Secret Service. Oh, he's really this. Oh, he's really that. It looks like we got the KGB here.
Absolutely. Well, let's go back to the phones. We have Lark calling from Texas. Lark, are you with us?
I am. Well, thank you for having Mr. Hurley on. Mr. Hurley, voices like yours, people today need to hear more of.
Well, thank you.
I want to say, please.
I've been contributing a lot of time and resources to this, and it's very expensive.
Well, I'm
sure. Talking about expensive legally and every other way.
Well, I've got two quick questions. The second one is quite profound. The first one is, did you or Ms. McClendon have any knowledge of Lyndon Johnson's activities while he was a congressman and in the Senate, actually involved directly in smuggling Russian mafia and communists in through South Texas through under the protection of the PARs or through the King Ranch?
Sarah, because I've known her for years. She was scrambling on a lot of those things that impinge upon what you're saying. But I could not say that I know about them with any enough to comment on them to give you any kind of a informed. But I remember that this was quite a few years ago when Sarah was doing that stuff. She was representing Tyler, Texas. You know, that's where she's from.
Sure.
And she was very interested in Lyndon Johnson and was going into a lot of awkward areas. However, I would not pretend to know about with any specificity about what you're talking about, other than the fact that she would bring up these awkward subjects all the time.
Well, of course, without Kellogg, Brown, and Root, Lyndon Johnson may not have had a career. But I want to say just
right.
Just in passing, I'd like to point out that you mentioned an interesting thing about Louis Freeh, but for the benefit of your listeners, if they do a quick web search, keywords being the Pope in red, they will learn about an event that happened in the Vatican in 1958, which actually was a coup d'etat over the lawfully elected new pope by the cardinals. And so all these cardinals have their patrons and benefactors behind the scenes. Well, as it turned out, they were all controlled by members of either the mafia, wealthy industrialists who had basically been able to whitewash their crimes over time, and people like that. But that would be very interesting if more and more people knew about that event in history, which has been basically hushed up. Now for my profound question, if I might.
Sure.
If there is, and I have my own quick answer, if I might, Wayne, but
go ahead.
Here's the profound question for you. If there was one secret about American history and the plight that Americans find themselves in today that would guarantee to get people off the couch, mad enough and into the streets to actually do something besides foment some kind of a communist revolution of sorts, what secret do you think that might be?
Go ahead, John.
Well, that is extremely profound. I'm turned on my mental winnowing machine on this one.
It is profound. It is profound.
Yeah, I'm trying to think of the one thing that would get him really upset. I personally think that, and this is off the top of my head, you know, I think that it's awful hard to get people to understand the perils of runaway government when they are getting a good income. So consequently, if economic collapse comes where you have a number of people hurting, now, I don't mean a lot of people that are sort of superficially bruised. I'm talking about really, getting in tough shape. There have been a couple of depressions in this country. After the Uncivil War, for instance, there was a depression. And, we all know the 30s, the depression. And we know of a lot of problems now that could develop and get a lot worse. But the end of the depression, I think that my answer, short answer, would be
you said you had an answer.
Economic.
Why don't you give it? What's your one event you think would?
An economic collapse.
Yes, which appears to be in the offing. And may I respond with what I think is the one thing?
Yeah,
go ahead.
Sure. Number one, the what we call the Americas, North and South America, was always a commercial venture, a gleam in the eye of those would-be slavers from Europe, particularly from the crowned heads of Europe, of a way to exponentially increase their wealth over time and thereby be able to enslave the entire world. And America was always perceived as a commercial venture as well as a slave colony. Now, here's the rub. It's always been a slave colony. And Americans today are truly living in slavery, because what is the one thing that separates a slave from a freeman? The right to own property. And today, Americans only have the illusion that they own property. And what has happened in modern times, since particularly the early 90s, is political thought has coalesced whereby actually it is the communist, the socialist, the fascist, and the capitalist that have joined hands. Why? Because with this technological age that we live in, and with the rapidity of information as it travels, more and more people are going to wake up to the reality. And so they have to join forces now before the American people and the rest of the world realize that they've been conned and duped and placed into slavery perpetually. And I'll leave it at that, and I want you to know I appreciate you both.
Okay, thanks. And we certainly see that with people finding out that their mortgages have been resold so many times they don't even have a piece of paper indicating they've got a mortgage on their home. So there may be a lot of truth in that. Let's go back to the phones. Dan has been holding on from Pennsylvania. Dan, are you with us?
Yes, hello?
Yes, go ahead.
Okay, yeah. Excellent that you got 2 hours finally. Been long-time listener, first-time caller.
Great. Thanks for calling.
Yeah, this is just a question I've been wondering about. It's I saw on RBN the other day that Obama had signed over the whole United States to China, and I was just wondering if you have anything on that or any comment on that.
Well, certainly we know that China is holding more and more of the financial cards. As a matter of fact, China is now the world's second largest economy. They've just eclipsed Japan, which was number 2. So, now we hear about the Jasmine Revolution starting to spring up in Shanghai and Beijing and a few other places, but being forcefully put down. But obviously,
just so they can keep buying our debt and everything. That's all I'm wondering.
Absolutely. We know that China's is the, I guess, 800-pound gorilla in the room now, and certainly what we're seeing play out with China holding our debt is just a new construct. John, do you have any comments on China? And
I think if you'll permit a slight diversion, I do agree that it's becoming the economic engine. But I mentioned earlier in the show that Henry Kissinger was engaged by the Rio Tinto Mining Corporation.
Right.
Rio Tinto, of course, they deal in diamonds, uranium, and everything. They're the largest mining operation in the world. And so they got enough power to send Henry over there to talk to Beijing and so on. And then I had a friend of mine who had been to Beijing on an economic mission and came back within the last month. And, the idea of having a parochial concept, of nations like China, Japan, United States, England, I think a lot of that is beginning to fade because if you're in Beijing, you look at all these corporations there that you would recognize. You know what I mean?
Right.
You have investors there that are all, half the time it looks like a half of an American town just about, except that you have a whole lot of technological advance there that you don't have here. For instance, this one man was saying that he noticed the subway system, and this one looked like a horse and buggy. They're talking about Washington, compared to the one in Beijing. And,
right, it's definitely. That's right. They're making advancements where our infrastructure is collapsing.
Yeah, they're even.
But if you look at
yes,
yeah, if you look at the investment packages for Beijing or for Sydney, Australia, or for the UK and Dubai and all these places, you'll find an awful lot of the non-identifiable from a standpoint of geography money. Do you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Assets. So I think that the new picture of the world is, it used to be a sort of these self-contained, more or less, different major markets in the world. I think that that's, becoming a little more diffuse as, communications goes the way it's going. And it's hard to say. I think in the future it will be hard to say that this is a Chinese cultural, premiership in a certain area, or this is an Australian premiership in a certain area. It's going to be hard to say because the people that are investing in Australia would be from every place, including China, or Russia, a whole bunch of places where you had oligarchs.
What the oligarchs call globalization, and we see how that's playing out in places like Ireland, which was one of the economic tigers. They just threw out their government, one of that party's worst electoral defeats in many years. But then again, we have the new crowd in. What kind of deals will they cut with the same elitists and oligarchs that put Ireland in the position they're in today? But definitely, it's all part of the globalization.
What would happen if we did like Iceland did, and threw all the bad debt and the derivatives out?
I think that's a great idea, but the problem with we know with the Obama administration, he's surrounded by the people from Goldman Sachs and J.P. Morgan that got us into this mess in the first place. The new chief of staff, Bill Daley, from J.P. Morgan. It's throw out the bums and throw in the bombs. That's what we get in every change of administration in this country. But thanks for calling from Pennsylvania, Dan. And we have George who's been holding on from Tennessee. George, are you with us?
Yes, sir. How are you doing today?
Yes, very good. Go ahead with your question for John Hurley or comment.
Yeah, my comment is that I've been through the mill basically, and somebody hit the nail on the head earlier with you go to court and they offer you a plea bargain, and they tell you if you don't take this, you're going to get that.
Right.
So you accept the plea regardless whether you're guilty or not.
Yeah.
And
and
it's ridiculous.
Oh yeah, I'll comment on that because I know these bargains and the business about settlements.
Okay, John, we'll have your comment right after this short break. This is Wayne Madsen from Washington.